Just last week, on the 29th of July, 3 innocent people tragically lost their lives after they ingested poisonous mushrooms at a family dinner. The food was cooked and served by a woman named Erin Patterson, who was the ex-wife of one of the guests, and rather suspiciously, she was the only person not to get sick. At this moment in time, Erin is yet to be charged with anything, however, I think the evidence speaks for itself. So, was this a devastating accident? Or did Erin Patterson know exactly what she was doing? As this case is extremely fresh, there is little knowledge about the background of Erin Patterson other than the fact she is a 48-year-old mother and divorcee from an area called Leongatha in Australia. Prior to her divorce, she was married to a man named Simon Patterson, and during their relationship they had 2 children together. But like most marriages, they had their issues, which eventually took a toll and led to their divorce in 2021. Not too much is currently known about their relationship after the breakup, but what we do know is that Simon was forced to live with his parents after moving out of the family home. He did eventually get back on his feet and moved into his own place a few months later, but friends of the family say that Erin wasn't exactly pleased with this news. Nevertheless, they kept up a somewhat civil relationship for the sake of the kids, and Simon was apparently keen to bury the hatchet. But then, on the 25th of July, 4 days before the poisoning, Simon and his family were invited to Erin's house for a family lunch. The list of guests included Simon, his stepmother and father, Gail and Don, plus Gail's sister and brother-in-law, Heather and Ian. Well, after speaking with Simon and getting his blessing, the group all agreed to attend, hoping that this would create a bridge between Erin and Simon, again for the sake of the kids. The family were even somewhat looking forward to the meal, despite the rather awkward setting, but unfortunately Simon had to pull out last minute, leaving his family in the hands of his estranged ex-wife, Erin. But despite Simon's absence, his family had already agreed to attend the lunch, so once July 29th came along, they all headed up to Erin's house in Leongatha. Little was known about the meal itself, as 3 out of the 4 attendees tragically lost their lives shortly after, and the 4th guest is currently in critical condition and in no position to be providing any statements. So unfortunately, the only version of events we have at this time is from Erin, who claims the incident was a complete accident and refuses to speak any further on the matter. It's likely she's been advised by her lawyers to keep quiet, however her actions are certainly suspicious to say the least. The 3 unfortunate victims of this incident were Don, Gail and her sister Heather, with only Heather's husband Ian holding on to life in intensive care as he awaits an urgent liver transplant. Simon Patterson has chosen to stay silent on the matter for now, however one of his friends came forward with information which certainly helps paint a clearer picture of the day. Apparently Erin was attempting to get back together with Simon, but he was not interested. According to Simon's friend, they went to her house for a mediation to talk to the family. He later added, the people who died, Gail, Don and Heather, were willing to talk to Erin because they're heavily ingrained with the church, and they wanted to make sure she was right to resume a relationship with Simon. So essentially, this meal was Erin's way of petitioning to get back with him, as at the time, the family didn't quite think that was a good move. The only reason Heather and Ian were invited was because this wasn't just a lunch. It was an intervention, with Ian the church pastor as the mediator. So it would seem from this revelation that Erin may have already known she was looked down on by the family, which could have been a potential motive. She did speak out on the situation shortly after the news dropped, but she denied any wrongdoing. Erin performed a short interview with a local news station in front of her house, claiming that she was devastated over the deaths. She was quoted as saying, "I loved them, and I'm devastated that they're gone. Gail was like the mum I didn't have because my mum passed away 4 years ago, and Gail had never been anything but good and kind to me. Also, Ian and Heather were some of the best people I'd ever met. They never did anything wrong to me." She was visibly upset as she spoke these words, however, when the question was posed about where she found the poisonous mushrooms, Erin refused to answer the question multiple times before finally disappearing into her house. On the 5th of August, detectives searched Erin's house and also questioned her over the deaths, but with no hard evidence to make an arrest, she was released pending further inquiries. It is still not known whether she ate the same meal as her guests, but police have at least been able to confirm that the two children did not eat the food. Victoria Police Inspector Dean Thomas has confirmed that the investigations into the deaths are not necessarily being treated as suspicious, using the word unexplained to describe the current state of the case. He added that the symptoms presented by the victims are linked to death cap mushrooms and that they are working with medical experts and toxicologists to find out how Erin would have been able to attain them. We've seized a number of exhibits in relation to the matter, and a lot of the items we have seized will be forensically tested in the hope that they can shed some light on what's occurred. He later added, "We're still trying to understand who ate the mushrooms that day, and of course, we're trying to clarify with absolute certainty what it was exactly that caused the poisoning." Well, due to Erin's lack of cooperation, we're only left to speculate on what happened during the meal, and there are already a few working theories making their way across the internet. But for argument's sake, let's say she's innocent. Perhaps she purchased the mushrooms from a regular grocery store and really was shocked to find out they were poisonous. The fact her children were spared could be just a mere coincidence. I mean, I didn't like mushrooms as a kid, I still don't really. Plus, Erin's lack of cooperation could just be due to following orders from her lawyers, as it wouldn't be the first time an innocent person got themselves locked up for something they didn't do. But on the other hand, could Erin be guilty of purposely poisoning her ex-husband's family? Well, this may not even be the first time she has tried to. Shortly after their divorce, Simon suddenly collapsed one day, and after it was discovered that he had been suffering from a mysterious illness, he was placed into an induced coma to save his life. Simon detailed his ordeal in a social media post, writing, "I collapsed at home, then was in a coma for 16 days, through which I had 3 emergency operations, mainly on my small intestine, plus an additional planned operation. My family were asked to come and say goodbye to me on 2 occasions, as I was not expected to live, being that I was in intensive care for 21 days. Well, this mystery illness has still not been identified over a year later. However, the symptoms are very similar to that of Ian Wilkinson, who is currently in critical condition after eating the mushrooms. So this piece of information is certainly very interesting, and will no doubt be taken into consideration during the police investigation. But if Erin is truly guilty of this crime, how did she manage to get her hands on the poisonous mushrooms in the first place? The dark web, perhaps? I can't personally picture a 48-year-old woman knowing how to access such a thing, but it's possible. I definitely think it's worth checking her computer, as at the very least, it may provide some directions to a location where she may have bought or even hand-picked the mushrooms. Another update to the case, which has literally just been released as I edit this video, claims that Erin has now been labelled as missing, since nobody has been able to get a hold of her for days now. Erin's lawyers are concerned for her well-being amid the media firestorm that's been outside her property ever since the story dropped. Apparently, they were waiting outside her house to deliver important documents, but when she didn't return home, they were eventually forced to leave and give up. It is possible she returned home without anyone noticing, but it's highly unlikely given the mass hordes of people outside the property. The incident occurred after Erin claimed she felt like a prisoner in her own home, so it's possible she left to get some space. She is currently being located, but as she's not yet been charged for anything, police are unable to gain access to her home to check on her well-being. But anyway, until more details are released, we will just have to give Erin the benefit of the doubt, for now. But in my personal opinion, I think the evidence speaks for itself in this case, and it will only be a matter of time before the truth is out. Either way, the act of poisoning your own family is certainly not anything new, as demonstrated by the video on screen now, where a Colorado dentist was arrested over the death of his wife after lacing her protein shake with cyanide.